Hello, and welcome to the Casino Tears podcast. I'm one of your hosts, 10 Ton is number one, and joining me as my co-host is the one and only Ed Robinson from Roll to Win Craps. If you want more info on our show, please visit our page at casinotears.com. On this week's show, we discuss Steve Heavy Haltom, Get In, Get Up, Get Gone. We also touch on dice control, history, Netscape, seminars, grease pencils, math guys, sleepers, and Ed learns about short stickin it. Hey everyone, this is 10 Ton with a quick note about today's show. It's one from the archives that we haven't had the opportunity to air until now. Once again, thank you for spending your time with Ed and I, and a very, very special thanks to everyone that helps support our show on Patreon. Patreon is the only place you will find extended versions of each episode, along with some notes and insights from myself. With that, I bid you all adieu and hope you enjoy part one of our conversation with Heavy.
Do I sound all right?
Yeah, dude, you sound good. Heavy, your headphones are good,
My
right?
headphones are fantastic.
You sound good. You should have been in radio, dude.
I was, man.
You want to introduce our guest, Ed?
Yeah, be happy to introduce our guest. It is my pleasure to introduce to everyone out there one of my mentor, really, in this game for many years now, Steve Heavy Haltom, whom we all affectionately just call Heavy. Right.
For obvious reasons. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Well, not as obvious as they used to be.
That's
right?
true. That's true. I'm about 60 pounds lighter than I was back in the video days. So for those who have picked up a copy of my original video shot back in 2005, I'm about 60 pounds lighter than I was then, which apparently didn't help a whole hell of a lot since I had a heart attack last October. But I'm doing well. You know, we got some little medical treatment on that and a couple of stents put in, and I'm right back on the road again.
Well, I'm very pleased to have you. So how you doing, my friend?
The craps were not biting. He came out to the class and forgot to bring my craps hunting license. So I didn't catch any.
Well, hell, it's his fault then.
It was a typical class weekend where Heavy didn't show up at the table at the right time. You know, I kept getting text messages where like Leanne just threw 4 aces in a row at the crapless table and took down $1,000 on her 4th hit.
Nice. Leanne was there?
Leanne from Chicago.
Chicago? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She wanted me to look at her toss, and I'm like, okay, I've looked at it. What's the problem? You know? And she's, well, I'm not winning as much as I want to. Well, maybe you're on the wrong damn tables, you know, because she plays at Hollywood in Aurora, which is like got flubber rubber under the felt, you know? I mean, it's like throwing on 10 trampolines. And I'm like, you just need to get your ass in the car and drive over to Elgin. She's like, that's an hour and a half. I said, I drive an hour and a half to the casino every fucking time I play. Yeah, get your ass in the car, drive to Elgin where there's some decent tables and play there and win some money instead of losing your ass at Hollywood in Aurora. Yeah.
You drive 5 hours.
You got a short drive, man. What the hell? Enjoy yourself. It's a scenic route.
Yeah, Leon's got a nice toss.
Yeah,
Leanne was in a class, what, Heavy? I'm going to say about
pre-COVID.
Was it pre-COVID or right after?
She did one pre-COVID, then she came down right after COVID, did one in Biloxi, but she did one pre-COVID in Vegas and after COVID in Biloxi.
Yeah.
I may have those reversed, but yeah, she's done 2 with me. And so this was her 3rd. She was in town for a business thing with her job, and she said, as long as I'm in town, I might as well come by and get a tune-up. So I did my usual, you're a good alumni student, you've done a couple of classes, I'll cut you a cheap deal on a tune-up. And so, oh yeah, I'll take that deal. And she came on down and did a day with us. And she didn't stay for the Sunday class, she just did Saturday and went out and gambled on Sunday all day.
And apparently hit three aces while on the crapless.
Four
aces.
4 aces.
4 aces is fantastic.
Yeah, once is the point. She set it as the point and made it, and twice during the hand, and hit one side of the ATS, I think, on that hand.
Good for her.
Somebody else hit the full ATS in that same turn around the table.
I ran into her in Biloxi a long time ago now, but it was just a total freak accident.
Yeah.
That we just almost walk up the table basically the same time. And we're like, oh, I know you, you know, we played for a long time together. She was a little more aggressive, better back then than I was.
She comes out buying the 4 and 10 for $30 or $35 right off the bat, and
Yeah.
then places the inside for a smaller amount of money. But
Yeah.
she sets for the 4 and 10, and she bangs out hitting a lot of 10s today.
She sets for that freaking 7 on the come out too, man. I remember that. Back then she did.
She was using the hardware set on the come out, but after that she was setting 6-4.
Her set's 5-4, 5-6, which is a very similar set. It's the same set that Howard showed me one time to hit the 4, but it's just rotated one. I ended up throwing it here after she showed me. Check this out. I threw 4 10s, 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 9s, and an 11. That's what I threw with that set.
Yeah. How do you like the view that's behind
a
you? Got to see the view, man.
fantastic view. It put me in mind of a guy in Dallas a few years back that an attorney that had an office in the same building I did, the Twin 60 Towers down there at the corner of Central Expressway and Northwest Highway. 2 gold towers down there. They used to shoot a lot of the Dallas episodes, the TV show down there, because that's supposedly where the guys from Dallas had their oil field offices. And
Right.
there was an attorney up on like the 23rd, 24th floor that was walking some new employees around the offices and showing him around.
Dallas.
Kind of like you did, was giving me the tour here this morning. And to demonstrate how safe the windows were in the building, he ran and did a Wile E. Coyote splat against one of the windows, and the window just kept going. He plunged. I shouldn't laugh at this, but he plunged like 23 floors to his death.
Oh man, that is a horrible
Holy
tour.
cow.
And
That's
later,
a horrible, not the commercial for safety glass.
and later that afternoon, there was plywood over that hole, and they were probably introducing a new group of employees around the law offices there. But
That's insane.
that's one of those, the Darwin Award moments. Yeah, that's like
No, I have to ask, since you brought up Wile E. Coyote, was there a little puff of smoke on the ground when he landed?
I don't know. I didn't actually witness it. I saw the plywood covering the hole in the window. Right after that, the company I worked for at the time had offices on the 6th floor. So I guess he passed us going down, but I didn't see it.
That's crazy. Why would anybody want to do that? Kick it or something, but
Because
don't
he's
jump.
an attorney. No, I don't know.
Mhm.
No lawyer jokes. We have no doubt attorneys listening in the crowd. So
He's got a nice fucking voice, man. This sounds like butter in the headphones, in the
lifetime.
cans, man.
lifetime of whiskey and cigars, buddy.
Yeah.
You too could have this.
Yeah, aged
You wanna-
perfectly.
You want to hear me hit subsonic? You're a bass player. You can appreciate
Yeah.
subsonic.
No, it's nice, man.
Yeah, I can get down there.
I was trying to think this weekend, like, how would we start this off, 10 ton?
Mm.
And I know we've got a lot to talk about, and whatever comes up, comes up.
Yeah,
But
That's dangerous.
you know,
that's how it goes.
that is dangerous. That's how it goes. We don't script anything.
But Ed,
We're just sitting on the back porch. talking.
Ed, exactly. Heavy, I credit you with coming up with a great description, the best description that I love about our podcast, which is just some back porch talking, right?
That's it.
I love that because it is extremely underscripted. Sometimes it's like, hey,
Yeah.
Ed, why don't you come up with some notes? Yeah, Ed does
No,
it.
there's no notes. There's no note. If we wrote notes, we wouldn't use them.
I would
know.
probably use a couple notes.
Yeah, you would, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to go off the cuff all the time.
Yep.
But I know that you started your first. I want to go back to the very first class that you taught. I believe it was in Tunica against everybody's recommendations because they said you would never succeed in Tunica.
That's a fact. And back in that era, really the only people that were doing classes on dice influence with Jerry Patterson and sharpshooter Chris Palicki from Detroit. And I was actually acquainted with Chris because I worked for Ford Motor Company. He worked for Ford Motor Company. I was a outside sales training kind of guy down in Dallas, Texas. Chris was an engineer, worked designed dashboard components for a subsidiary of Ford up in Detroit. And Chris was originally a roulette systems guy. He dealt in roulette systems, and he had another player who was also a roulette systems player who worked with Jerry Patterson. They bought systems from Jerry Patterson. They got interested in craps, and independently they started developing a dice influence strategy. And Chris kind of took the forefront on that. And they didn't know that they were both working on it, but both of them approached Jerry on it. And apparently Jerry put them together and they kind of co-developed the PAR program, but it wound up being Chris's baby, Sharpshooter's baby in the end of the day. And he owned the, what's the word I'm looking, we call it the copyright. It was his intellectual. And Patterson was marketing the program as the Patterson Advantage Rhythmic Rolling System.
Yeah, that's what PAR stands for.
Yeah, and Sharpshooter was the teacher on it. And they had a bunch of coaches that worked for them, guys that volunteered their time to coach the class. And I was invited to attend one of their seminars because I was prominent on the internet. And this goes back to the Netscape days when that was your browser of choice.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And the only craps discussion groups of any note were recreational gambling craps news groups. For those of you who know what the news groups were back in the day, you got to go back a ways. And I was one of the few guys who talked about dice control, and I was much derided by the math guys. This shit can't work. You're full of crap. You're a liar. You're this, you're that. You just beat up every day. And I calmly rationalized that, no, not really, because think about it. All you have to do is take a pair of dice, just happen to have a pair like this, and sure, it's difficult to control the dice, but it's not that difficult to influence them. And all you have to do is reduce the number of ways the dice can roll from 36 possible combinations, 6 ways to roll on this die and 6 on this die, down to 16. So imagine you have a steel rod, an axle through these dice, and can throw them so they rotate on axis and they land and tap the back wall and bounce back gently and land on one of the 16 possible combinations on this axis. Then you reduce the possible number of outcomes. And certain axes that you throw those dice on have 2 sevens and some have 4. So on a come-out roll, you throw the dice with an axis that has 4 sevens, and in the point cycle, on an axis that has 2 sevens, and you gain a mathematical advantage. And I'd run through the math on it and explain it all to them. And they would come back with, it's impossible to do that. There's square, there's a back wall, there's a felt, there's this, there's that. And every toss is a random toss. And I would say, bullshit. And we'd just go around and around and around and around and around. I was the great defender of dice influence on the internet back in those days. And Jerry Patterson wound up inviting me to come to a seminar. And he also invited Tom Morgan, who's Irish setter, who owned dicesetter.com back those days. We both got invited to come to a seminar in Vegas. And as fate would have it, I was kind of interested in starting doing some dice control stuff because I worked as a sales trainer and sales and marketing guy for Ford Motor Company. A big part of my job was standing up in front of people and teaching them how to do crap. So this was no big step for me. I'm not afraid to get up in front of a crowd and speak, obviously. So I'm thinking, I could put together a PowerPoint presentation. I could put together a couple of practice rigs. I could do this, and do the seminar. But I was curious about what PAR was doing. So Jerry invited me to come and be a guest speaker and Tom to come and hopefully attract some additional players to come as guests to an open house day for PAR on a Friday. And he would pay us a little bird dog fee for everybody that showed up, a small bird dog fee. And he and I wound up getting paid about $80 a piece for some guys coming to the class that weekend. And if they signed up for a full class on Saturday, they got more money, right? As fate would have it, Tom and I are sitting there watching this class. And the sharpshooter is up on an elevated stage, and he's doing the class with an old school overhead projector with Mylar clear film on it and a grease pencil.
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, Chris is an engineer by trade. He's not a stand up in front of people and talk guy.
Right.
He's a math guy. So everything he's explaining to you is just wipe it off with a cloth. Wipe it off with a cloth, and going through all this stuff. And everybody's sitting there nodding their heads, but nobody has a freaking clue what the hell he's talking about. And then he says, I'm going to toss some dice and give you an example. And he's got a toss station and he's got a practice rig up there, and he sets a dice and throws them into the practice rig and says, wow, a hard 8. And he goes up and picks up the dice and walks away. And he doesn't show us the dice. There's no camera on the dice. We can't see that he threw a hard 8. We're taking his word for it. And then he goes back to his practice rig and picks up the dice and throws them Wow, another hard 8. Like, holy shit, he threw 2 hard 8s in a row. Okay. And so that's and at that point, I turned to Irish and said, Tom, you and I could do this seminar better than they do. We could do it cheaper than they do. And he's just sitting there nodding his head. I'm thinking exactly the same thing. So I had already convinced myself I was going to do a seminar at that point. But Jerry had mentioned to me that he was thinking about selling par, getting out of the business. So I had lunch with him that weekend and told him I was interested in buying par. And he said, well, that's an interesting prospect. How will we do that? And we discussed it. And he's like, let me think about that and come to my next seminar and we'll discuss it more then. So the next time he was in Vegas, we got together and he said, well, he decided he didn't want to sell.
Okay.
So I said, well, let me propose something else. Let's do a franchise deal. And the reason Sharpshooter came to that second meeting, and that's when I learned that Sharpshooter owned the intellectual property. And Sharpshooter had a say as to whether or not he got rid of par. And that was a part of the business I wanted because I wanted access to Jerry's mailing list and his clientele base.
Right.
And I didn't care about the par information, because I had my own stuff and I knew more about dice control than they did. That was the other thing Tom and I found out from attending that class. We had hoped we'd learn something new. In fact, we figured out at that point we knew more than they did. So we're like, well, what do we do? And I'm like, well, I'll see if I can franchise this sucker since he doesn't want to sell it. So I met with he and Chris at that point, and that's when Jerry told me that they weren't interested in selling. So I suggested that we do a little franchise deal, and he split the company up into regions, and I would take the Southeast, which included Biloxi and Tunica, get Bo Parker, my buddy dice coach, who was living in Vegas at that point, and let Bo take the Southwest, let Dominator, who was living at the time in New York, let him take the Northeast. Billy Stansfield, who's known as Billy the Kid, could take the Pacific Northwest. And then there was another fellow who since passed away who I suggested would be good for this country.
I like that handle.
Yeah, that's Billy the Kid.
That would have been a cool handle to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another guy up in Chicago who has since passed away that I recommended for a Chicago guy. And he's like, well, that's an interesting thought. Let me think about that for a few months, And a few months pass and he comes back and no, he doesn't think he's going to do that after all, So he thinks he's going to sit and wait things out for a while. So I say, okay. So now we're up to me doing a class in Tunica. I told him I'm going to do it without you, Jerry. And so I'm going to do a class in Tunica. And that's the point. He says, you'll never get anybody to sign up for a class in Tunica. I've tried it before. And the most we've ever had was 8 people in Tunica, Mississippi. And I said, well, I'm going to give it a shot and see. So I went on the news groups and sent around a few mailers to people I knew and let people know I was going to do a class in Tunica. And I actually did a direct mail out piece to everybody that I knew and wound up with 23 people signed up for this class in Tunica. And I'm like, I can't handle 23 people by myself. I've got to have some help. So I got a buddy of mine, Dice 6 and 8 from St. Louis, to come down and help. And Jerry Stick, who's known as Stick Man with Golden Touch, who's since retired.
Yeah.
Jerry was one of the par coaches. And I asked Jerry if it'd be all right if I got Stick Man to help me out. And he said, sure, that's fine. I said, I'll tell everybody he's a par coach. He give you a little plug. And Jerry appreciated that. Try to be fair to everybody. And so Stickman came out and helped out at the class. I told Jerry, I'm going to pay you a certain amount of money for every student in the class. And he seemed kind of surprised at that. But had a great class. It was over with. I paid Jerry for helping out at the class. He went home a happy camper. While I was loading up the truck in the end of the class, putting all my practice rigs and all my gear in the back of the truck, one of the female students from the class and 3 of the players from the class went over to the Hollywood Casino.
It's still there. It is still there.
Yeah. And the lady tossed an hour-and-a-half hand that I was told went about 64 rolls. One of the gentlemen we call the luckiest man alive won $180,000 on 183 to be exact.
Wow. Wow.
The second guy.
Wow. Oh my God.
The second guy, who I'll just call Mr. Magoo, he won 77,000. And then the third guy, who I will call Marina Mike because of his trade down in South Florida, he won Around 37,000, somewhere in that range.
Marina Mike, what do you mean because of his trade?
Marina Mike ran a salvage business in the marine industry.
Nice.
And Mr. Magoo was casino manager for a cruise to nowhere ship that ran out of Biloxi back in the days
Yeah.
before they had.
So heavy on that. There was no bonus bet or no repeater. That was all money earned the hard way, right?
Money
Like the
earned the
old
hard
school
way.
way, just numbers.
Yeah. And
Wow.
That ended up being what? About a $300 and something thousand.
over 300,000 taken off the table.
Do you know what the table max was? Was it 5,000?
I think it's 5,000.
Wow.
But it's 10 times
10
odds
times
in
odds. 10
Mississippi.
times odds. Yeah. So people ask me all the time, how do you win $180,000 in a hand? Okay. So luckiest man alive walks up to the table. I played with him many times. He gets a marker for $35,000. That's what he starts with. And if he runs out, he'll get another $35,000.
Yeah.
But he'll get a $35,000 marker. First bet, buy the 4 and 10 for $5,000.
Sweet. I like this already, Heavy. I like where this is going,
like
man.
that.
Get no working your way up to house max on this deal.
Buy the 4 and 10, $5,000 each, $6,000 on the 6 and 8, $500 on the pass line, 5,000 odds, 10 times odds, 5,000.
Yep.
And then he makes 3 $500 come bets, which he hopes travels to those numbers he has placed bets and buy bets on, and takes 5,000 odds out of them. Then he reduces it to $250 come bets and makes continuous come bets with 2,500 odds until the hand's over with.
Yeah.
Pushing. Never goes back up to 500, just keeps pushing 250 with 25.
Listen, so you bring up all the come bets, which to me, it's kind of fell out of vogue. It's a pretty old school way to play the game. Oh, by the way, you mentioned grease pencil before.
No.
Dude, grease pencils are great, aren't they, Heavy?
Yeah,
They're so cool. I should, Ed, you know what? I should get one. And because, I love that stuff on whiteboards and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the polite word is China marker, although that might not be polite anymore, because everybody takes it. Oh, you can't say the word China anymore. It's offensive to
You probably
Chinese
would
people.
you would get canceled probably for calling a grease pencil a China marker, but I'm going to get one because my dad used to have those. Those were cool things to have.
And you pull a little string and unwrap
Yeah.
it.
I don't know if you
yeah.
can
And we
find
used to
one
use them.
anymore.
Okay. Used to use them on the radio station when we're splicing tape.
Yeah.
Zoop, and then mark the spot. And there's where the
I don't even
splice
know if
goes.
they're are even around. I'm going to look for one and bring it on the show. All right. So come bets, dude. The only people that I ever hear talking about come bets are old school players, and people aren't really using them that often, are they?
3, 4, 5 times odds houses. Most people don't play come bets because they essentially pay the same as the place bets do in most cases.
Yeah.
And the come bet has to hit twice to get paid. You get paid on the first hit on the come bet. So you're one step ahead on the place bet all the time. So go ahead and get paid on the first hit and get on down the road and you're ahead of the game. Conversely, the come better say, oh, yes, but I've got that little hedge out there against the 7 rolling against all the other numbers. Well, yeah, I'll tell you what you do with your little hedge, trim it. You want to win at craps, trim your hedges.
Yeah, but the luckiest man alive, he certainly won that way.
But it's a 10 times odds table, and that makes a different animal. That gets your house edge down on a skinny to nothing. So, yeah, once you get the ball rolling with that thing and get a couple of off and ons, off and on for $6,500, hey,
yeah,
you're in Fat City.
Yep.
I played a couple of months ago when I was in Biloxi, and I kept hitting the same number and then hitting. I was like buckshotting the point over. I mean, it's just like 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. And so I just started going to 10 times odds.
Yep.
On my $15. I was going 100, 10 times odds every time on my point. And I'd hit that thing over and over and over. And it's a sweet thing when that happens. 10 times odds is not common, especially out there where you guys are. But man, in Mississippi, it's perfect.
It's everywhere, unless it's 20 times odds.
So that number, that odds number, should you always take that and take it high?
If you're going to bet odds and you have the bankroll for it, increasing odds increases bankroll volatility. Bankroll top volatility is a wonderful thing when the table is hot, but when the table is cold, it will chop you off at the knees. And that's what people who say always take max odds never tell you, is that it's subject to bankroll volatility. And if you're not sufficiently bankrolled, it'll chop you off at the knees. So
Yeah.
that's where one of the ways that place bettors tend to have an advantage by, let's just old school advantage in a $10 game. Bet a $24 6 and 8. Take one hit, it pays you $28. Regress to a $12 6 and 8. You have $24 at risk. You've got a $4 guaranteed profit for the hand. Next hit, go back up to 18 each on the 6 and 8, and you're off to the races if the hand continues. But you guarantee yourself a profit by that regression, and that smooths out the bumps, the peaks and valleys on the short hands, and sets you up to make a profit on the long hands. And that's one of the things you need to do at craps if you're playing on a short bankroll. So do I know anyone that's not playing on a short bankroll? Sure. I know lots of guys running around with $1 million bankrolls, $6 million bankrolls, but 80% of the players I know are blue collar guys.
Yeah.
They work hard for their money,
Yeah.
and they come to the casino for a 3-day weekend with maybe $2,500, and they're going to play 10 sessions, and you break that down, $250 a session, or they can play $500 a session with a $250 loss limit if they keep a loss limit, which most of you people don't, by the way, and that's something else.
Most don't. Most are willing to give everything they got away,
Yep.
and I preach heavily against that.
Yeah. You got to have a win goal, ladies and germs, and a loss limit. And I'll tell you right now where my win goal comes from. This was back over 20 years ago. There was a study done here in Las Vegas that showed that if a tourist walked into a casino with a $500 bankroll and bought in at any table game and won $363 and did not, part one, cash out, and part two, leave the casino, they would give back that $363 and the entire $500 they bought in with and walk out flat ass broke. So
Yeah.
when I read that article all those 20 plus years ago, I set a win goal of $360 and a loss limit of about $300 session buy-in. So if I get up $360, they ain't getting it back. Okay. If I look down, we've got a hot hand going on and I'm winning, and I check it out and I'm up $580, I'll take $360 plus my buy-in and stick it in the back rack. And whatever's left of that, the $300 plus that's left over, I'll continue to play with that as long as I continue to win. But if I lose half of that, the table has turned, it's gone south. We ain't winning no more, baby. We're going to get the hell away from here with the rest of this $300 that we got left, and it's color coming in. Show me to the cage, because there's no point in standing there and losing the rest of that money. So that's how you play.
So what do you think about math, guys?
New episodes drop weekly every Tuesday. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we'll tell all of your fellow craps playing friends about it. Please follow Casino Tears on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. If you like the show, please rate it 5 stars and leave a review. The best and most fun way to contact us would be to call and leave a message on our official Casino Tears vent line, 229-NO7. You can also email us at no7@casinotears.com. And lastly, to help support this podcast, you can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/casinotears. On behalf of Roll to Win Craps from Alabama and 10 Ton is #1 from Las Vegas, thanks for listening.